Hello and welcome back to the Jet Press Podcast. My name is Justin Fried, and I'm joined, as always, by my good friend, Mike Luciano. Mike, before we even jump in, Connor Long gifting 5 memberships. Much appreciated, my friend. Connor, you are the man. We saw that right before we went live. Awesome. Appreciate you, dude. We got a fun show planned, Mike. How are you doing on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon in late March?
Well, I'm mixed because, and you can check this out in the official fan-sided March Madness sort of pool. I got the first game wrong, Louisville Creighton. Okay. I then got, you can check this, 18 consecutive first-round games picked correctly.
Wow.
I left the first round in the 99th percentile of ESPN brackets, and then St. John's lost, and I had them in the Final Four, and now I got screwed.
I've watched St. John's all year. I picked them to lose second round. Granted, I picked them to lose to Kansas, but we don't got to talk about that because I saw enough of St. John's to be like, man,
the athletes Arkansas had, they hadn't faced those athletes before.
Yeah, eventually they were going to run it. I know this isn't a college hoops top podcast, but eventually they were going to run into a team that was able to out physical them, was able to be just as athletic as they were, and they were going to struggle shooting the ball. And RJ Lewis had a bad game.
My champions are still. My Final Four was St. John's, who's out, Kentucky, who's still in. Duke going to the championship and losing to Auburn. So 3 of my 4.
I got Florida winning the whole thing.
I had Florida almost. My big upset was UConn beating them, and they almost did.
There you go. Almost did. Well, the reason we're talking March Madness is because, as Brian is already saying, he said, "What a depressing episode it's going to be."
What a fun episode! It's all about perspective here.
Yeah, or we'll have a lot of fun because I'm looking at this and saying, "All right, we are going to go through, because in the spirit of March Madness, we want to do something March Madness related. We are going to go through and look at, we have 16 seeds, I guess you can call them, of the some of the worst moments, the lowlights of the Aaron Rodgers era over the last 2 years. Doesn't have to necessarily be related to Rodgers, but just something of this era, this forgotten, despicable era of Jets football. And we're going to go through it in March Madness style. And of course, it is only 2 of us. So if we are split on a decision, we are going to ask chat and see if you guys can help split the tie. Before we jump in and before you even do the show credits, really quick, for those who were at the end of last week's show, I was talking about a specific tight end. I don't know if anybody, or I don't know who was in the chat at the end of that last show, but I did find out who that player was 30 seconds after we went off the air, because I was frantic. I had to find out who it was. The player I was talking about was Isaac Nauta. There you go. For completionists out there who wanted that is the slow tight end who went to Georgia. I was right. He did go to Georgia, and he was a 7th round pick. That's what I was referring to. I don't care. I don't know if anyone cares about that. But
found out literally right after the show ended.
Yes. I felt the need to share that with all of you. But anyway, Mike.
All the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. Thank you guys for joining the Jet Press Podcast. You know where to find us. We are on all the podcast platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, we are there. And on YouTube, there's 2 ways to support the show. Actually, 3 ways. You can donate a super chat.
As Connor
has done. You can join our 99-cent membership, or for free, subscribe. Just hit that little subscribe button and like the stream. Those really do help. No BS. It does help drive us up the the algorithm, because YouTube sees more liked videos and engaged videos. It's like, oh, people are commenting on this, and it pumps us up. So that is how you support the show. But Justin, we got a fun show for you. We got a March Madness themed show, and I must for full disclaimer, we put these 16 items in here. There are 16. The seeds were randomized.
Yes.
Because we didn't want to just rank them, because that defeats the point of March Madness, because then all the favorites win. So we randomized the seeds. We came up with 16 people, moments, incidents, funny things that happened over the last 2 years of the Aaron Rodgers era, and we are going to figure out what was really the most memorable, infamous, whatever you may be, moment of the era. So now that we got our bracket,
real quick, I want to get to a comment from Leon, because I think this is Leon says the hate and ridicule you guys have for Aaron Rodgers is unjust. It didn't work out. He didn't play up to his lofty standards and high expectations, but he definitely gave it his all. Leon, I think as you're going to see us doing this bracket, this isn't about Rodgers. We're just calling it the Aaron Rodgers era because it is easier to say that. A lot of the things on this list are not necessarily Rodgers related. This is Jets organizational dysfunction overall over the last 2 years. So no, I don't think either of us here hate Aaron Rodgers, and I don't think that that's the point of what we're doing here. This is just more so looking at the embarrassing, awful moments that have happened to the Jets over the last few years, and I guess taking a stroll down memory lane, reminiscing. Hopefully, this is the thing that can put a bow on everything that has happened over the last 2 years, and we can put this behind us and now move forward with the Aaron Glenn era. But first, let's reminisce, Mike.
Let's reminisce, and let's get started right away with our 116 matchup.
Man.
This is one, I think, while both funny, I think there's a clear winner here. The committee got it right with the season here.
I wouldn't say one of these is funny. I don't think
funny. Yeah, one of them is funny. One of them is not. Yeah. Number 1 seed, Aaron Rodgers tearing the Achilles 4 plays into his Jets tenure before he did anything. All we got was that video of him running out with the American flag. You're like, this is the greatest moment of my life. And then he didn't even complete a pass.
Nope.
Before he tears his Achilles. And then the number 16 seed, Tony Adams being benched. Tony Adams is starting again next year, by the way, unless they draft somebody, which I don't think they're going to do. Him and Andre Cisco are your starting safeties. Basically because Woody Johnson, the terminally online owner, basically read a Michael Nania article and said Tony Adams was not playing well and then demanded that Jeff Ulbrich bench him, which he did.
You're giving Woody too much credit. Brick read that article and then told his dad about it.
Oh, yes, Brick, of course, the teenager who was also the assistant coach and the GM and the kind of owner.
We'll get to
offensive coordinator. Brick contains multitudes here.
Brick's on this list, I believe, multiple times.
Brick is on this indirectly multiple times. Brick is on this list. I don't know about you, Justin, but this seems like chalk to me. I'm going to go with the Achilles tear because as funny as the Tony Adams thing was, the fact that an owner has that level of influence, I mean, unfortunately, that Achilles tear was one of the, you don't want to say iconic for a bad moment, but it is an iconic moment.
Infamous.
Jets history for all the wrong reasons now.
Yeah, I'd say it's one of the most infamous moments in football, in recent football memory, in recent NFL history. I was hoping that a Woody benching Tony Adams would be, one of those dark horse like 12 or 13 seeds that gives a higher seed a run for its money, because it is genuinely hilarious that this happened. Like Tony Adams, of all players, being kind of the scapegoat for all the Jets' misfortune last season, and Woody being like, you know what we're going to do? You know what's going to turn this team around? Let's bench an average safety. Let's bench this guy, throw in whoever else out there, which Tony Adams, I think, Mike, Tony Adams was the best safety in the Jets roster last year. That's not saying a lot. I don't think they had any particularly standout players at the position, but Tony Adams was fine. He's a fine player, and I don't think he was playing particularly poorly, and then he ended up getting put back in the starting lineup anyway. So it is hilarious that Woody Johnson decided to bench a random former undrafted rookie who is one of the only younger guys who might be around in the future on that defense, or at least in the secondary or at safety. But yeah, I think this one has to be Rodgers tearing his Achilles. And then you're right. I think the computer, the random number generator got this right, because that's going to be a really tough one to beat.
That is going to be a tough one to beat, unfortunately. Oh God, Brian Sternbeck in chat, missed opportunity to not nickname these. Number 1 should be called the snap.
Yeah, some of these were kind of
pop.
The pop. Don't do that. Four plays. Brutal, man.
One of those things where you just look to the heavens and say, what have I done?
Yep. That's
So
one
let's
of
go to the 8-9. These are always good. They're always competitive. 8-9 matchups. The 8 being Aaron Rodgers repeatedly saying things to the effect of, we need to keep distractions out of the locker room, going on Pat McAfee and causing more distractions every single week with his comments. Not because this guy does not at least know that his shit stinks and thinks that he's the greatest. Probably a nice guy, decent quarterback at this stage of his career, but he thinks he walks on water, and he thought he walked on water with the Jets, and everybody else was screwing things up when part of it was his fault.
You're not doing great for my case that this wasn't about Rodgers when I was talking to Leon.
And then number 9, same old Jets is dead. That's kind of the catch-all for that Thursday night win against the Patriots where they just beat the brakes off them, and Aaron Rodgers had his best game as a Jet. And then somebody on this podcast, I won't say who, but you got a 50% chance, declared that same old Jets was dead. And then pretty much the second he said that, nothing went right for about 2 months.
So basically, these are two tone-deaf quotes. Like,
these are two incredible. This is the tone-deaf region
this
matchup.
Is funny that these got matched up with each other. I mean, I don't know, man. I honestly, what are you thinking on this? Because, well, it's the concept of same old Jets is dead. It's not just me saying that, right? It's
the concept of we thought it was fixed with the New England game, and then it's just as bad as ever.
I am leaning the keep distractions out quote. I think that's going to be remembered more than the positivity that we felt after that Patriots game. I think in many ways, the Rodgers keep distractions quote kind of defined his era with his time with the Jets in a lot of ways, or at least from an outsider's perspective. I think a lot of outside people who don't follow the Jets closely are going to look at that quote and be like, oh yeah, that's what was wrong with the Jets was this. And I don't necessarily agree with that, but I think that will be remembered a lot more. So I lean to keep distractions out. What do you think?
I might be the only problem I'm having with that is, you know how in movies guys always go, could this day possibly get any worse? And then stuff like that happen. What could possibly go wrong? And then things go wrong.
Yeah, the comedic timing was impeccable.
That was the closest thing to a real life. What could possibly go wrong? I've seen in quite some time. So the comedic effect is making me lean towards that. But
what is chat? I want to know what chat thinks then.
Yeah, chat. Let us know because
I think we're on the fence about this one.
I think I might be slightly leaning towards keep distractions out, but okay, yeah, this is a tough one.
I could be swayed either way. It's same old Jets is dead is funnier. Keep distractions out is more like, again, that's going to be an outsider looking in and being like, all right, that is what defines the Aaron Rodgers era in New York, is Aaron Rodgers going on Pat McAfee and saying, hey, let's keep the distractions out. Like, I think that is going to be a more defining, but for the sheer comedy of it, I wouldn't be opposed to same old.
Ryan Sternbeck says, if no other McAfee appearances coming up, it's 8 in a landslide.
I don't know if we have any other McAfee.
I don't think so. That might be.
I don't think we do.
That's part of maybe just the entire McAfee experience.
That's a great point. This is basically the McAfee entry. So if that's the case, I think
it's this.
Yeah, I think keep distractions out has to win. Just him appearing on McAfee.
But it was tough. It was tough. The 5-12 matchup. The red line incident.
Hold on. Tony in chat just said bring back Eddie Pinheiro. I thought that was really funny.
Out of nowhere. Okay.
Well, did we take Zerline off or did we keep Zerline on?
Oh, he's on there. We'll get to him.
We will talk about the kicker position, Tony.
We'll get to him.
I don't think Eddie Pinheiro might be the solution. Eddie Pinheiro is very good if you want to make a field goal under 50 yards. He just does not have a leg. But anyway, we'll get to that. We got red line versus
12 matchup, the famous red line incident with Aaron Rodgers and Mike Williams calling out his own receiver. Pretty much immediately led to him getting banished from anything the Jets are trying to do offensively. Then he ends up in Pittsburgh. He's now back with the Chargers, by the way. And he called it a mistake to leave the Chargers. So that shows you how that year went. Poor Mike Williams. I mean,
yeah,
I felt bad for him. First, they didn't use him at all, and I felt bad. Then that happened. I'm like, okay.
But then he went to Pittsburgh. Like, his legs were not under him last year. Like, I don't know if he'll be back to his pre-injury form or anywhere close to that this year. Now he's back in LA, but even with the Steelers, like he didn't look like the same player. But yes, I do feel bad for him for how this went.
The 12 seed, a guy I do not feel bad for, Hassan Reddick, who had the closest thing to financial self-sabotage I've seen in the NFL, cost himself almost 8 figures in fines, had 4 straight seasons of 11 sacks, only gets 1 this year because he was out of shape and not trying and didn't care. He talked about, I'm committed to the Jets and playing with Robert Saleh when he never even got to play with Robert Saleh because he held out in a move that I think was his own choosing because his agent got rid of him in the middle of that. So I think that was his own self-inflicted wound. For me, this is actually an easy 12-5 because the red line thing was kind of weird, but also Mike Williams did mess up. So I guess you don't want Aaron Rodgers to say that publicly, but he did mess up. So that takes some of the comedic effect out of it because it's not like Rodgers is blaming somebody else. The Reddick thing was so bizarre. Like, people were making fun of the Jets for the trade and all that. It's like, well, yeah, they didn't expect a guy would cost himself almost $10 million to take a principled stance that didn't even work. And then he got basically another 1-year prove-it deal with Tampa Bay. So that it's not Le'Veon Bell level career sabotage, but in terms of how much he just messed up the money, I mean, Reddick is almost unprecedented.
It's damn near close. Like, I can't remember seeing a situation where an agency straight up dropped the player because the player was sabotaging their own career. Like, that is a wild situation.
The closest thing I remember when Ricky Williams went to the Saints, and remember they traded their whole draft for him?
Yeah.
And Master P was his agent, the rapper. And he basically got him. Ricky Williams wanted like the minimum base salary and then incentives. So that way he'll be like the number 1 paid running back if he meets all the incentives. Mm-hmm. And the league filed a grievance saying like this is harmful to the player. And Master P's like, no, this is what he wants to do. Like they were fighting the union. That's the only other thing that even comes close.
It is wild, man. I am with you. I think this is a landslide. I think these seeds should be flipped. And honestly, I think the whole Hassan Reddick debacle is probably one of the favorites on this entire list because that is, even in Jets history, even in the grand embarrassment that is Jets history, the amount of embarrassing things this organization has had happened to it, somehow the Hassan Reddick situation is one of the weirdest that they've ever encountered. Like, I don't think it's quite Ike Anapoli breaking Geno Smith's jaw, but it's up there. It's a wild.
I can understand. No, teammates get into fights all the time. You just happen to get one that connected.
Yeah, this is Brian said the red line moment wasn't the exact end of the game, but the Reddick one, where Reddick was just a long summer, both inevitable pettiness and confusion. Yes,
I mean, all of our podcasts for a month were like, yeah, this is weird, but he's gonna play eventually, and then he didn't.
For months, I remember being like, well, he's going to have to show up. Like, there's no other.
It would be stupid if he didn't show up, is what we kept saying, and we don't think he's stupid, and then he didn't show up.
We didn't even consider the possibility that this could happen because it was so unfathomably dumb that no one thought this was a possibility. So, yeah, I think it has to be the Hassan Reddick situation. And that's going to be another tough out. That's a tough one to beat.
That will be. And this week, to be fair, again, randomize the seeds, so we might get some funky matchups here. Yeah. A 4-13. This has a lot of good upset potential here where there were rumors that Aaron Rodgers was going to go join his buddy RFK, who was somehow now in charge of National Health Services, which is that's confusing, I would say, to say the least. Rodgers was considering doing vice president. He wasn't just like talking about it. Like, there were legitimate, like, political reporters were saying this is a non-zero chance of happening.
I'm annoyed that in all the discourse around Rodgers this offseason of where he's going to play next year, no one has brought up, like, what if he just goes into politics?
See, I don't think he's like that. I don't think politically he's like bent like what the current administration is. I think he's just like a out there weird contrarian.
He is a free
guy. So I don't think he's. I think he's more an RFK loyalist, which is a scary term in itself. But so there was that, and then 13 seed. We couldn't pick one moment, so we just lumped the entire experience of Nathaniel Hackett and Keith Carter together.
Yeah.
Because Nathaniel Hackett, A, for being Teflon and surviving through all those firings, number one. B, despite not having any responsibility. B, being the offensive coordinator despite not calling plays or handling the offensive game plan. So what did he do as the offensive coordinator? And Keith Carter, because I've never you should never know your offensive line coach unless you're Jeff Stoutland. I've never seen a position coach openly mocked and ridiculed by their own players, not even outgoing ones, by their current players.
Yeah.
Quite like Keith Carter. So this is tough because the Rodgers VP thing like made waves outside of sports. That's why, and it stayed there for a while.
That's true.
But Hackett and Carter were just so incompetent. It was almost like bar rescue bartender levels of incompetence.
It depends on how we're going to define this, because one of them was clearly a lot more damaging to the organization than the other. The Rodgers VP rumors, while hilarious and embarrassing in their own right, didn't really tangibly affect the organization in any way. Like, it was just kind of off-season noise, the keep distractions out. It was kind of like that. The Nathaniel Hackett, Keith Carter stuff was actively tanking the coaching staff. Like that, keeping Nathaniel Hackett around for another year. I mean, first of all, hiring him in the first place, but then once you saw how bad it was, bringing him back for another year, and then not only hiring Keith Carter, but then once all the players on the team there were Jets players on social media who were very public and vocal about how they did not like working under Keith Carter, and then they still brought him back, and that wasn't even a Rodgers thing. Like, we all understand why they kept Nathaniel Hackett. We all know why he was on the team in the first place and why he was still employed. What's the excuse for Saleh keeping Keith Carter?
Especially when they got rid of so many other position coaches. That year. Like, they got rid of everybody but kept him.
I have no idea why they kept him. So it just depends on how we're going to define this. I think if we're defining it as like the worst moments of the Rodgers era,
maybe most notable,
I'd still say Hackett Carter. I would still say that over Rodgers VP. Rodgers VP was ridiculous, and it was very much a like, oh, this only happens to the Jets situation. Like, that was kind of how I remember thinking about it. But it didn't tangibly impact the team, and I think it went away pretty quickly. We moved on pretty quickly.
Because RFK wasn't going to win anyway, so it wasn't like there was any,
Whereas the Hackett Carter thing was that legitimately derailed the offensive coaching staff for the last 2 years. Like, I think that one has to win.
So 2 upsets. We got a 12-13 matchup coming up soon.
Upsets in quotes because it's all randomized, but.
Yeah. So now we got the whole Egypt trip.
Yep, minicamp.
Missing mandatory minicamp debacle is the number 3 seed. And then that dreaded word leverage.
The L word.
During all those trade talks. I'm going to end up going with leverage in another upset only because the Egypt trip, I remember even saying, like, look, I know it's a big thing. Oh, mandatory minicamp. How long was that? 3 days?
2 days, I believe.
2 days?
Yeah.
Okay, 2 days. Aaron Rodgers failed with the Jets. It was not because he missed 2 days of minicamp over the summer. That had no impact.
Sure.
Leverage only because professionally, we had to hear that word for a month and a half nonstop about, I have leverage. Let's give this pick. Let's give that pick. And the funny part is people act like the Jets blew with this Rodgers trade, and they did. The Packers ended up getting basically their big prize out of this was Lucas Van Ness. And I think Luke Musgrave, who's the 3rd string tight end now because Tucker Kraft has surpassed him. So I don't think anybody's looking great out of this. So for all that leverage talk, it equated to nothing.
Interesting. I'm leaning Egypt tripped. I'm leaning the minicamp. Leverage was obnoxious. That whole conversation for months and months and months. But I don't think the Packers ended up like turning those picks into anything special. I think they got a little bit more than I thought they would. So maybe there was something to the truth of the leverage. Like, obviously the talk of like, there were people that I remember Packers fans, whether it was the Peter Bukowskis of the world, were like, yeah, they're getting a 1st-round pick for him. They're getting a 1st-round pick. And then when they did the pick swap, they were like, see, they got a 1st-round pick. And it was like, no.
Well, the Jets got one too then. Oh, my God. Yeah, Rodgers and a 1st-round pick.
They were never going to get a first. But I do think they got a decent enough haul for him. And I don't think it necessarily killed the Jets, especially if they plan to take Van Ness over McDonald. McDonald has absolutely been the better player to this point. So I don't think that is, and obviously the whole Broderick Jones discourse, it's not like they missed out on anything big there either. So I don't think
Bill Belichick screwed the Jets, Broderick Jones. Meanwhile, Broderick Jones is bad now, and McDonald's pretty good. So
yeah, honestly, these are both kind of like, I don't think either of them mattered a ton, but I will say that people are still talking about the Egypt trip and people are still talking about Rodgers missing minicamp. And that was a huge thing for a while. And
I get that. I could not care less about like it didn't.
Yeah. I don't think it did much.
How many guys don't go to that freaking thing?
I don't think it did much, but I will say, I do think there are people in the organization that rubbed the wrong way. specifically because he like went on a vacation. Like I think that's the part of it.
Yeah, well, I guess it wasn't like like
It
a
wasn't like
birth
he
of a
missed.
kid or anything like that.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, there were only two players that were not at minicamp, and it was Hassan Reddick and Aaron Rodgers. And we know why Hassan Reddick wasn't there. Aaron Rodgers took a trip to Egypt, and
I think you've sold me on Egypt. I just
I think
professionally it was so tough to your leverage for 2 months.
Yes.
Leverage.
I get that. I do think the leverage one was just annoying, whereas the Rodgers thing, again, it wasn't the biggest deal, but I think it mattered a little bit. Like I think people were annoyed. People in the organization were annoyed.
The 11-6 matchup, the 6 being the Devontae, yeah, sure, the Devontae Adams trade,
And the Zeke Wilson.
and Zeke Wilson. Jeff said he went on vacation and didn't tell anyone. No, he did tell
them.
He
told them.
It's just the fact he went anyway.
Rodgers told the Jets months in advance. Like they had months of notice of this. Like that's why it's not like he didn't just leave.
He didn't no call, no show. He just.
But it was like, hey, I have a vacation planned, and it just so happens to align with minicamp. I'm gonna go on this vacation.
I didn't even think he wasn't even on the Jets at that point. He didn't know when the minicamp dates were. It's whatever.
No, he was on the Jet. That was
he?
That was this past summer.
I'm not a travel agent. I don't remember.
Yeah, that was he was definitely there. He was that. He was,
my bad. Yeah, it was the second semester. My bad.
Wait, it's whatever. It's like optics with it, but anyway.
But the Devontae Adams trade, this ship was sinking. This was their Hail Mary to save it. And to give Joe Douglas credit, Devontae Adams, I would say excellent player when he was on the Jets. For what they thought they were getting in terms of ability, he fulfilled every bit of that. He looked really good. And we were, I think, somewhat upset that they had to let him go, especially now as they're looking for more wide receivers. But it didn't have the winning impact that they thought it was, and they basically just lit a third-round pick on fire for half a season of Devontae Adams in a year that meant nothing. The number 11 seed, this might be my Cinderella. During 2023, during the whole Zach Wilson, Tim Boyle, when we were pleading for Trevor Siemian to play, we did that for weeks.
God,
pleading for Trevor Siemian to play.
Don't remind me, man.
So we were doing that. At one point, I believe this was after a game against the Dolphins or the Texans. I believe it was the Dolphins. It was early December.
The Dolphins was the Tim Boyle game. No?
Well, we'll get to that. It was. I think it was after that.
Maybe.
Because Wilson, Zach Wilson, I think it was been banged around a little bit.
It was after the Bills. It was
after the Bills game, excuse me, where they lost again. He basically quit. He did not want to play. There were rumors that Zach Wilson was so concerned about the Jets' offensive line and their offense and what they were doing that he just didn't want to risk playing and getting hurt.
Yeah.
Which, that to me sounds like quitting. That to me sounds like a dereliction of duty. And I have to believe it, and I have to believe Tim Boyle was the one who leaked it, because right after that story came out, Tim Boyle got cut, and then Zach Wilson played anyway after that. Wilson quitting for me wins this, because Devontae Adams at least was pretty good. Like, the fact a quarterback was like, nah, I don't want to go out there, man. I might get hurt. Like that's something that only happens. And then, as Brian says, Zach Wilson plays against the Jets, has the best game of his career.
Plays against Texans.
And then he played against Miami and got concussed again and never played again, but just a weird situation. So the weird factor, and I'm willing to believe it because they got rid of Boyle, which makes it look like they got rid of a guy who leaked stuff. I'm going Zach Wilson over Devontae trade.
I agree. I mean, the Devontae trade is bad because they basically just lit a third-round pick on fire. Like, that was it. Obviously, they weren't doing anything that year, so it was just a waste of a third-round pick for a half of a year of genuinely good play out of Devontae Adams, but meant nothing for the organization. Zach Wilson, there's a lot of, I know there was a lot of drama around that, and there's different accounts of exactly what happened. But from what I remember,
they didn't just make that up.
No, from what I remember, Zach Wilson was benched after that Week 11 game to the Bills, where he was very bad. And instead of starting Trevor Siemian, the Jets decided to start Tim Boyle. They started him for 2 games, I believe 2 games, including the
lost to Desmond Ritter's Falcons.
Yep, yes. and then that famous Black Friday Dolphins game, the Fail Mary, if you want to call it.
We'll get to that.
Which we'll talk about that, the Javon Holland 99-yard pick 6.
Yep.
And then after that, and then I believe Siemian ended up relieving Boyle in that game or at some point, but he didn't start. And then they were like, hey, Zach, you want to come back and start for us? And I think that was Zach Wilson, not only did he not want to play behind that offensive line, he didn't want to, play for that team because he's like, what's the point? I'm just going to kill my stock more. I think he was pissed and he was mad that they benched him and then had not only did they bench him, they demoted him to 3rd string
For Tim Boyle.
For Tim Boyle and Trevor Siemian, who passed him. And then 2 weeks later, they were like, actually, we don't even want you as the backup. Now we want you starting again. So I get why he was pissed, but obviously as a football
player, somebody has to play the position.
As a football player, especially as a quarterback, a struggling one at that, you're only going to get so many opportunities to play in the NFL and to start games. So being like, I don't want to play is a bad look. And from what I understand, he didn't say, I don't want to play. It was just kind of like, I think it was the report was that he was, there were rumors in the locker room that he had talked to his teammates or talked to people on the team in the organization that he didn't want to play again. And that's kind of what surfaced. Obviously he did end up playing again and he went through with it. But yeah, because of the sheer hilarity of all that, absolutely. Zach Wilson quitting, whatever you want to call it, him not wanting to play, him being reluctant to go back and play again, that has to win.
We got 3 double-digit seeds with upsets here. Let's see if we can make it 4. 7-10 matchup, the 7 seed being Robert Saleh being fired, 20-36. He's 5 games into the year, 2-3 record. The 2 losses were to playoff teams. The Broncos he should have beat. Greg Zuerlein missed a couple kicks. And then Minnesota, who was a world beater for most of the year, he was down to the last possession, and Aaron Rodgers gets picked at the 20-yard line, 15-yard line, and that's the end of the game.
Mike Williams fell down.
Again, Mike Williams.
Yeah.
Looking at that, this is I get firing Saleh, and this is why I might not pick it to win, because we think Saleh got a raw deal. We think a lot of what went wrong with Robert Saleh was not in his control. He never got a quarterback. He had 5 games there in Rodgers. He had 34 with Zach Wilson. I don't know how anybody wins with that. I don't care how good you are. I don't know how you're supposed to win with that. He did the best he could. But in year 4, after not winning, and then he was going to get fired at the end of the year anyway, same with Douglas, you kind of saw it coming. They just did it to get an extended look at Jeff Ulbrich, and that was a huge mistake because Jeff Ulbrich was unwatchable. It's very rare for a coach to be unwatchable, but Jeff Ulbrich was. And then the Tim Boyle Hail Mary, the Fail Mary, where they're playing Miami on Black Friday, national TV, everybody can see it. And they're down. I think it was close at that point because Tua was not playing particularly well.
It ended up being 30-0, I think was the final score.
But it was 10-0 at halftime or 6-0.
It was about to be 10-0 at halftime, and then they threw
and then Tim Boyle throws a Hail Mary. Javon Holland, new Giant, intercepts it, runs it back 100 yards for a touchdown despite having no momentum and 10 guys in front of him.
Yeah.
Somehow he goes untouched 100 yards back.
Yep.
I'm picking that because I remember almost turning into the Joker when that happened. I'm like, there's just no way. There's just no way. How does this happen?
I was laughing. I burst out. I think I burst.
Yeah, I turned. I'm cracking up. Are you serious?
I can't. I have to say it's the Saleh firing. Because if they were going, the issue is the timing. That is the ultimate issue here. If they were going to fire Robert Saleh after the season, I would have been like, I don't necessarily fully support this, but I get why they did it, and I don't think it's the worst move ever. I don't think Robert Saleh did a particularly good job at the Jets. Firing him when they did, now knowing, even at the time, we both were like, this is...
we thought it was dumb.
Even with the benefit of hindsight, it's even worse. Because not only did Jeff Ulbrich come in and just do it, look, I'm sure he's a wonderful guy and he's well-liked by the players, but he did a horrific job.
Brian Sternbeck calls the Tim Boyle play the Hail Satan instead of the Hail Mary.
Oh, my God.
That's a pretty good. I like that one too. That's not bad.
Isn't the Fail Mary the replacement refs Packers Seeves?
I think it might be. Yeah. No, that was the incomplete reception, I believe.
Oh, is that what they call
Immaculate incompletion or something like that?
People have different terms. I feel like Fail Mary had been used before, but regardless, I still think it's the Saleh fire because not only did the team completely fall apart and everything, but Ulbrich he was so bad, man. And it was I will say though, Brian did say Ulbrich was a much more effective tank commander than Saleh. So yeah, if the goal was
he because they had the 7th pick, not the 4th pick of the 3rd pick.
But if Saleh was there, they would have won a couple more games. I think. I think they would have finished probably middle of the pack.
Probably 7-10 with Saleh.
Yeah, which whatever. So I guess in that respect, maybe it is better that they fired Saleh. But I do think that that one is worse.
It's certainly more. It's probably because it's more memorable. I feel like the Tim Boyle Hail Mary is like a Jets fan. I can't believe that happened. It was an inconsequential game in a lost season.
The Tim Boyle Fail Mary or Hail Satan or whatever we're calling it would be one of the most embarrassing moments for 80% of NFL franchises.
If it happened in a game that mattered,
Or even if that happened to like the Tennessee Titans, Titans fans would talk about that for decades, for years at least. Jets fans, it's like, whatever, man. That's like barely cracking our list of the 16 most embarrassing things that happened in the last 2 years.
In a 2-year span.
It's inflation. It's inflation of embarrassing moments. That's what it is.
Our final first-round matchup, the 15 seed Greg Zuerlein getting Steve Blast disease.
Yeah.
If you are aware of what that is, Justin.
Yes, I do.
All right, because those that don't know, Steve Blast was a pitcher for the Pirates. He pitched for like 10 years. He was pretty good. And then 1 year, he literally just could not throw. He'd throw the ball 3 feet over the guy's head. He'd throw it in the other batter's box. He would walk like 2 guys for every guy he would get out. Couldn't throw strikes. Had to retire because of it. And that's probably what happened to Greg Zuerlein. I mean, aces kicker.
He got
the first 2 years with the Jets. Aces, couldn't miss. Now the games matter, and not only does he miss more kicks, I mean, at one point he's 6 of 11 on kicks. I mean, they had to get rid of him soon. He basically cost them like 2 games.
I believe he made 1 kick longer than 40 yards all year.
1, and that was a guy who was almost like a Pro Bowler beforehand.
He literally had the best season of any kicker in Jets history in 2023. Statistically, the best
next
kicker.
Year couldn't play, shot.
Yep.
And then the Madden ratings. Oh. The 1-2 seeds got kind of lucky here because
2 seed. That's a fitting.
That's a strong 2 seed. The Madden ratings, of course, the reports that Brick Johnson, the son of Woody Johnson, was using Madden ratings to tell him which guys to sign, which guys not to sign. Supposedly the Jets wanted to trade for Jerry Jeudy, and that got nixed because his Madden rating was not high enough and Woody bought it.
Yep.
How much of it is Joe Douglas trying to leak stuff to Diana Rossini to look better? I don't know. But you don't make it. It's one of those things that's so absurd. There's a line of absurdity where if you go too far, you're like, okay, yeah, that's ridiculous. Like if they were doing seances to contact the dead to pick players, you're like, okay, that's not real. That's completely fake. This is so specific. I have to believe that this happened. There's too many details involved in here where I'm like, okay, like there's no way somebody made that up from scratch.
No, it's definitely not made up. Was it exaggerated and played up? Yeah, probably. There's a very good chance it was, but it's certainly something that like it was brought up at some point and it was treated as a serious thing at some point. So people ran with it. There's also the John Simpson. I think that was another one where it's like Woody didn't want
John Simpson. And that was one of the best signings Joe Douglas ever made.
By the way, I actually checked the Madden ratings before this on the official EA website, and John Simpson's like an 82 now. So he's like one of the highest. I think he's one of like the 5 or 6 highest rated Jets players now on their roster.
Deserved.
That it is deserved. He was fantastic last year. This one has to be Madden ratings.
Has to be
100%. We've seen kickers just completely lose it before. It happens.
I guess the fact that it derailed a season pretty much.
To the degree
led to Saleh getting fired.
Yeah, to the degree that it happened with Zuerlein, we don't see that too often where a guy goes from maybe the best kicker in football to, I would say, the worst.
This wasn't like a second-year guy. And this guy's been in the league for like 12 years.
Right. He just completely caught the yips at age 39, and then that was it. So we've seen stuff like that. The Madden ratings, reports like that, I can't remember anything. I don't remember another NFL team being accused of using Madden ratings to make transactions. That's a very much only the Jets, only Woody Johnson thing. And as Brian,
let's move on to the second round if you're ready.
Brian points out, Zuerlein is still on the team. Yes, he is. He is still under contract. They have Anders Carlson. I believe they also just worked out Michael Badgley. The Lions connection there. So maybe
Money Badger.
Maybe they'll go into the summer with 3 kickers and 2 punters on their roster. Who knows?
Why not? The more the merrier. So our first 1-8 matchup. This is a Rodgers-centric one. The Achilles tear versus keep distractions out, the McAfee experience.
It's got to be the Achilles tear now.
It's got to be nobody would care 1 iota if they were 12-4 and he's on McAfee. He could be saying the most ridiculous, nonsensical political things in the world. If they were 12-5, nobody would care. In fact, some people would probably support it. Because they're saying that's just what he does. He needs to, that's part of how he works. The Achilles tear just felt like getting a shotgun blast in the chest. And they won that game.
They did.
People don't even remember that.
That's what sucks. It was honestly one of the coolest Jets wins in recent memory, and it's a game that we can't even talk about.
The highlight of Xavier Gibson's NFL career.
Yeah, it's one of the best Jets wins in the last 10 years, and it's also just happens to be the same game that ruined one of the most optimistic eras of Jets history. So Yeah, that's just very Jets. And I don't want to spoil the rest of this bracket, but I feel like it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be real tough.
It's gonna be tough.
It's gonna be tough.
There's an overwhelming favorite. Now we got a 12-13 matchup in the final 8 here. The whole Nathaniel Hackett, Keith Carter experience as Chew donates 5 members.
Oh, what a guy, Chew. Much appreciated, buddy.
Much apprecited, Chew. You rock.
Yeah.
The 12-13, Hassan Reddick quitting, or the whole Nathaniel Hackett, Keith Carter back of who knows what the hell's going on? What were they teaching these guys in the game experience? I'm going to have to lean Reddick here only because we've seen bad coaches. We've seen probably coaches, even with the Jets and outside of the Jets, worse than Nathaniel Hackett and Keith Carter. Like, it seems hard to believe, but we've seen that before. There are guys even worse than that. John Shoup and guys like that. Tons of them.
Adam Gase,
Olbrich. We've never seen a guy that good. 4 straight years of 11 straight sacks with 3 different teams. Was in a Super Bowl. Local guy, wants to get paid. Just refuse and cost himself so much money to the point where his agent, who's going to get a cut of his money, says, "You're being so stupid. I can't represent you because you're hurting my business, and I'm doing stupid things to try to get you money." I've never heard of that before. So that leads me to go to Reddick. Although I think Hackett and Carter would have won out against some of the other guys on this list, I'm going to have to go with Reddick here.
Yeah, it's got to be Reddick. Like, you could make the argument, and I would agree, actually. I think that Nathaniel Hackett and Keith Carter being employed was more damaging to the Jets than the whole Hassan Reddick debacle. But the whole Hassan Reddick drama, everything surrounding that, the entire situation is just so obscene and so ridiculous that it has to win. Like, it has to win. And honestly, that's a heavy hitter semifinal matchup that we'll get to with Achilles.
Yeah, that might be that may have been my top 2.
Yeah,
if I seeded this,
yeah,
there's a good chance.
That's a good one.
Now we got a 3-11 matchup. The Egypt trip or Zach Wilson quitting.
Interesting.
This one's tough. Again, I wasn't the biggest Egypt tripped guy in the first round.
I think it's Zach Wilson, and I would phrase
I
would phrase it differently. As I know you put Zach Wilson quitting, and that's just the easiest way to put it. I would phrase it almost as like the Jets' handling of that situation, because it was, again, Zach Wilson was already awful, and they shouldn't have gone into the year with him as QB2. And if they did, they should have brought in somebody that wasn't Tim Boyle or Trevor Siemian to give him competition. But finally making decision to bench him, putting in Tim Boyle, realizing very quickly, holy shit, this guy can't play at the NFL level. Which we've known this, and we knew this about Tim Boyle.
He couldn't play at the FCS level.
He couldn't play at the FCS level. Sure as hell couldn't play at UConn. So the fact
he couldn't play at Eastern Kentucky.
Right. And so, yeah, so going in and benching him for Tim Boyle and then putting in Trevor Siemian briefly, he sucks, but also you're putting him in a bad situation. And then literally 2 games later being like, actually, Zach, you want to start for us again, buddy? You're actually our best bet. Sorry, even though we just made you 3rd string, we're now going to make you the starter. I think that is just such incompetence on the part of the Jets. And it's even funnier or more embarrassing that Zach Wilson was like, actually, I don't want to play again. I'm sorry. I appreciate you guys asking, but I'm really not interested. That is ridiculous. And I feel like that is
all the crap Anthony Richardson got for like tapping out of a play and then coming right back in. This is worse.
It is worse.
At least Anthony Richardson came back in the game after that.
It reflects poorly on everyone involved. It reflects poorly on the organization. It reflects poorly on Wilson. It reflects poorly on.
And nobody holds it. What is it? Why is he so Teflon?
I don't know.
Admittedly, too, like Justin Fields has a degree of that too, where he's very Teflon on social media, and like not a lot of things are his fault. But I mean, Fields at least showed you much more than Wilson ever did.
Fans will always cling on to hope with young quarterbacks. That's what it comes down to. And Zach Wilson will always have that pro day, that throw to pro day.
I like how everybody does that. People have done that throw.
I know.
For years before that. They're doing it after. Now it's the Zach Wilson throw. He goes, the Jets, Zach Wilson was a 3rd-round pick. They took it too because of the throw. It's like, no, he was going to be he could have not thrown that pro day and he would have been number 2 pick.
Yes.
The problem is, like, everybody knew Trevor Lawrence was going 1. Pretty much immediately after everybody knew Lawrence was 1, they're like, and then Zach Wilson's 2. And then the rest of the draft, it's like, wait a minute. Why is Zach Wilson 2? Like, why was he 2 so early?
As Brian said, it's got to be Wilson. I didn't get enraged by Rodgers taking a vacation, but I was already pretty defeated by that point. That's also very true. By summer of by this past summer, it was already like, all right, man. Like I know there was some hope and some optimism. Like, all right, healthy Rodgers, and we're talking ourselves into it. And look,
the roster looked so deep outside of him.
Look, I like the Mike Williams signing. I like the Tyron Smith signing. Sue me. I thought those would be really good moves, and clearly they weren't. But yeah, I wasn't. I also was not enraged by Rodgers taking the vacation. I was very much like, all right, I can see why this would rub people the wrong way, but this is getting way too much press, and it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, like the fact that people said like this is the reason that they're losing games is because of that. It's like, give me how many guys don't even go to train, like miss the whole preseason?
The only long-term ramifications of that are just solidifying the notion of certain, or the opinions of certain members of the roster who probably thought Rodgers got special treatment. And not everyone felt that way. A lot of people loved Rodgers. So it's not even like it was an overwhelming locker room consensus.
The 7-2 matchup, another tough one here. The Robert Saleh firing or the Madden ratings?
Very different scenarios here. Very different things.
Like again, we've had a lot of these matchups where it's like one's more serious and detrimental, and one's like funnier, and you have to decide like, is it iconic because it actually impacted the team on the field, or is it iconic because it's funny and unique, and you wouldn't see it with any other team except the Jets?
I'm going funny here. I'm taking Madden ratings.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen bad coaches get fired.
Yep.
The timing was bad. It basically ruined an entire season.
And again, as Brian pointed out, if maybe it was for the best, because they probably would have won a couple more games with Saleh, and maybe they would be in a position to get a Mason Graham if he falls. So I think it's got to be the Madden ratings. It's just so absurd. It is. I
saw people defending that because Eric DeCosta, the GM for the Ravens, said like, "Oh yeah, sometimes we look at he's from He's got like a Boston accent. Yeah, sometimes we look at Madden ratings for our players, and we're like,
see Peter Griffin.
Well, he's from like Massachusetts. So.
Yeah.
Steve Spagnuolo talks like that too. I'm like, whoa, this guy's got a harsh accent. But I remember hearing that, and then people are like, "Oh, see, it's not that bad. Like other teams do. It's the Ravens are really good and they win all the time. They can do that. Jets can't do that.
Yeah.
When you're that good, you can do that.
Especially if it's the owner doing it. It's the owner.
The owner's son.
I'm sorry, the owner's son. The owner's
teenage son who's never done anything remotely challenging in his entire life, and will inherit $1 billion fortune by doing nothing.
Hey man, all power to him.
I not more power to you. We're working hard.
Yeah,
he's worked more harder in this show than he has his entire life.
If I was the son of a billionaire, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. So the Final Four, first matchup, this is a heavy hitter.
This
the
is
Achilles tear or Hassan Reddick quitting.
Again, this is the very much like one is a lot more serious and clearly more detrimental, whereas the other is so ridiculous.
We should have had like a serious region and a funny region. That would have been.
Oh, that would have been fun.
Yeah.
Or serious. Man, this is tough. I think I know which way I'm leaning. What do you think?
I think I know which way I'm leaning to, only because they're probably going to make a 30 for 30 at some point about this whole thing. There's a good chance when that movie comes out, we're going to find out when the Achilles popped, everything immediately, like that was it.
Yep.
That ruined everything. That 2023 was the year, and then that was it. So because of that, they had to do things like Tyron Smith and Hassan Reddick to overcompensate for that. So I'm going to have to say Achilles tear, although I do think in a seeded bracket, Reddick might be my number 2 seed just because how many holdouts do they have every 10, 12 holdouts a year with star players? Has one ever done this? Le'Veon Bell, as we mentioned. Oh, Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell was basically just a free agent who chose not to sign with everybody.
Yeah.
As Brian Sternbeck says, the snap killed 2 seasons. The holdout killed 1. Reddick didn't even kill the season. It was just like it was like you wanted to pick him up and shake him and go, "Stop! What are you doing?"
Somehow the Reddick thing wasn't even the biggest storyline of 2024 for the Jets, which is
by the time he came back, Saleh gotten fired and Joe Douglas had.
By the time he came back, fans were like, "Dude!" By the time he came back, fans were like, "I don't give a shit anymore." Like it was like whatever.
Like we know he's not going to be good,
right? No one even cared. Like it's got to be the Achilles tear. Like if we're talking about the last 2 years as a whole, if we're talking about the New York Jets over the last 2 years, the Rodgers era. This is when it failed. I don't know if they ever had a window of opportunity beyond that moment. Once that Achilles snapped, once he tore his Achilles, that was it. It was a worthy gamble. I credit the Jets for trying to do it. I credit Joe Douglas for making that swing, and I don't think it was a bad decision, objectively. I don't think it was in a vacuum a bad decision. But once this happens, that was it. The window was firmly shut.
Brian says Trent Williams had that kind of holdout, though. He wanted to get out of Washington, get paid.
Trent
Williams, I believe, had a medical problem where they misdiagnosed a cancerous tumor on his head.
That's what it was.
You are allowed. I would burn that organization to the ground if I was Trent Williams. Like, are you kidding me?
Chris Jones held out in week 2 or whatever.
Hassan Reddick wanted $5 million more a year in average annual value because John Franklin Myers got paid, and because of that, he ruined his whole career.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
It's pretty wild.
The 11-2 matchup. Zach Wilson refusing to come into the game and basically quitting, or the Madden ratings.
These are both just so Jets.
Look, maybe the Browns this happens to.
Yeah.
Maybe the Jags. Maybe the pre-Dan Campbell Lions when they had Matt Patricia.
See, that's the thing. I want to get to a point where when I say, oh, that's so Jets, we don't think of shit like this. And I think we can't, I think that will happen in our lifetimes.
Even for other bad teams, everything on this list, if this happened for another bad team in the span of 10 years, it wouldn't be out of – this happened in 18 months, most of this.
Yeah.
Half of this list happened within 3 months of each other.
And there's an entire decades and decades worth of other lore that we could talk about that we could have done one of these brackets and made it 64. Maybe this is a thing for the offseason, 2 shows and where we do it over multiple weeks. But where we do 64 of the most embarrassing moments in Jets history. And there will be no shortage. We can absolutely find 64.
And it's not like we're the Bears where it goes back to the 1920s,
from the Heidi game, the fake spike, Kotite,
AJ Dewey in the AFC Championship game,
Testaverde tearing his Achilles. There's a million things we could talk about, even in the last couple of decades.
Multiple week 1 Achilles tears for star quarterbacks.
Entering a season with Super Bowl expectations.
Multiple on the same day. Wasn't it the same day too?
I think it might have been, yeah. Or was it because it was September 11th?
I think it was the same day for both of them.
Probably. Oh, no, Vinny was there. Testaverde was at the game.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Testaverde was at the game where Rodgers tore his Achilles.
Surely this won't happen again.
Right. And I think they honored him on the field. I think he was on the field at the beginning, before the game.
Is that like that Alex Smith, Joe Theismann thing?
Where
the Kennedy Lincoln things where it's they had all the coincidences?
That was the same. It was the same day. They were facing
the same yard line, the same score,
same team or something. I think. Yeah, it was.
Because they were playing the Texans and no, because it was Giants, but it was the same yard line, the same position.
Yeah, it's like that. But anyway, Zach Wilson quitting. That whole debacle of the Jets messing that up and Wilson not wanting to play versus Madden ratings. I do know where I'm leaning with this one. I don't know what you're thinking, but I'm leaning Madden ratings.
I'm leaning Madden ratings too.
So Brian Testaverde was a pregame captain. Yeah, I knew he was on the field. I knew he was on the field in some way before the game. Yeah, he was a pregame captain. God, man.
Madden ratings too, because again, we don't know the full. We don't know the full story for either of these really.
Yeah.
But I feel like, again, we've heard of players being basically Zach Wilson was upset.
Yep.
Guys have quit before. Guys have quit at halftime. I've never seen Madden ratings from a 17-year-old who may have been used to overrule. We don't think Joe Douglas is a very good GM, but for God's sakes, the guy's been in NFL front offices for 20 years. I think Joe Douglas knows more about football than Brick Johnson.
And Madden developers.
And Madden developers who how do they even formulate that? If they're game developers, how do they get the ratings?
There are ratings guys that do it separately, I believe, from the developers. There's stuff. There's couple former NFL players that do it. They're not random.
That makes them even worse. If former NFL players.
Honestly, yeah. You hear some takes from former NFL players. Yes, I agree with that.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna go Madden ratings
for sure. Again, if I'm thinking of what has defined the last 2 years for this Jets team, I think the Achilles tear defined 2023, and I think the Woody Johnson athletic reports, specifically the Madden ratings thing, defined 2024. And I think that is what most Jets fans will probably remember the most from 2024. So yeah, I gotta go Madden ratings. Brian said I still want to go with Wilson. That was peak BYU, of course. Zach shouldn't have shouldn't want to
Oh,
play.
yeah, he was getting defended. Like, yeah, I would do the same thing. No. That's when no one ever does that.
It did bring out the worst of Zach Wilson stands or BYU fans, whatever you want to call them. Like, they're the same people. It definitely brought out and here's the thing. Like, he wasn't wrong. Zach Wilson wasn't wrong. He was pissed that they did relegate him to third string. I get it. I'd be pissed too. And then 2 weeks later,
got to play.
I agree. But 2 weeks later, they're like, hey, you should start for us again. I'd be pissed. I'd be like, you're an incompetent organization. And he was like, probably didn't want to get hurt. And guess what happened? He got hurt. So like, I get it. But obviously, yes, you do need to play if you are.
And what's he done since? Ugats.
He hasn't played in a game. He literally hasn't even appeared in a game since.
To that point, it's a career-ending injury. Yeah, I don't think he's been active. Has he been active? He was the third string all last year.
I don't think unless he was active. He might have been active as like a third string a couple
week 18 or something. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe late in the year or something. But he definitely never appeared. He didn't play a snap. He did not appear in a game. So yeah, I still think it has to be the Madden ratings for sure. And now we get
the championship, the grand poobah, granddaddy of them all.
We have the number 1 versus the number 2 seed.
Number 1 versus number 2.
Wow. This really worked out.
Thank you, randomizer.
It's got to be Achilles tear, man. It has. Is there a case for Madden ratings?
There is a case for Madden ratings because
what's the case?
The Achilles tear was just an act of God freak accident that nobody could plan for. They were building their organizational strategy to win based on a video game and the input of a 17-year-old. And supposedly transactions were overruled for a guy like Jerry Jeudy, who's a pretty good player, because of what game developers in Tiburon, Florida, believed of Jerry Jeudy's wide receiver ability.
Is that a city in Florida?
I think it is.
I never knew that. I've always seen that related to EA Sports. I didn't know that was a city.
I think that's the city that they're in, that EA Sports is in.
I never knew that. You know what I always, because I don't know, this is a very random poll. When you would you remember like creating
the Tiburon Sharks. Oh,
yes, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Oh my god, yeah, the Tiburon Sharks. I was always like, as a kid, I was like, what the hell's Tiburon? What is this?
That's an Any Given Sunday reference, isn't it? Because weren't they the Miami Sharks in Any Given Sunday?
I've never seen it. I don't know.
Oh, you're missing out. Al Pacino, Jamie Foxx is like a young Jamie Foxx in it.
Oh,
Willie Beeman. That's a good movie.
Nope, never seen it.
That's a problem. When this stream ends, you're gonna go watch that movie. It's good.
I'll pull up some Isaac.
I think Dennis Quaid's in it as the other quarterback. So
I like his son in The Boys.
And he's going to be in that Novocaine. I'm excited.
Yes.
But anyway. That's the argument for Madden ratings is it was more of a plan that was doomed to failure and a bunch of people signed off on it, as opposed to nobody could plan for the Aaron Rodgers.
Here's my case for the Aaron Rodgers Achilles tear, right? This entire bracket doesn't exist
without the Achilles tear.
Aaron Rodgers doesn't tear his Achilles. I think basically everything on this bracket is a product and a butterfly effect product of Rodgers tearing his Achilles. I think the Jets trading for Aaron Rodgers and going that route could have worked. I think there's a world out there where it did work. Of course, we know it's the Jets, and always expect the worst case scenario, and that is exactly what they got. They got the worst case scenario, but there's a world where it could have worked. Unfortunately, once Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles, the second he tore his Achilles, the second it snapped, the second before anyone even knew it, before he even knew it happened, the millisecond that he tore his Achilles, the window shut. That's it.
I know we're Jets fans, so it hit us a little more, but even if you take that out of it.
Oh my God, dude.
Incredible. Breaking news. The Titans have signed Tim Boyle.
Incredible timing.
How does he do it?
How does he keep getting away with it?
How?
Oh my God. What is this? How many teams is this now?
Tim Boyle signed before Aaron Rodgers.
That is hilarious. Wait. Whoa. Rodgers to the Titans? Is that Rodgers to the Titans? Is that what I'm hearing?
I'm saying Rodgers did not sign.
I'm joking. Like, he's going to follow Boyle there.
All right. Green Bay, Detroit, Chicago, New York Jets.
This is his
Texans, Dolphins, Giants, Titans. Eight teams, a quarter of the league.
That's 8 times as many touchdowns as he had at UConn.
8. I think it's almost like a joke at this point. Like, it's like a running bit, right? God. There has to be.
I don't know how he keeps getting away with it.
It's got to be that, like a running. It's like remember how Josh Johnson would always sign all those contracts?
Josh Johnson was okay.
No, I'm saying it's like that about how there's a million QB3s to sign. Or like, you know that pitcher Jesse Chavez, how he's been released and signed to the Braves like 7 times.
Well, it's like Edwin Jackson or something who's just
it's like you could sign any. There's 5 guys out there who are that good. Why does everybody always pick Tim Boyle?
The Titans quarterback room now features Will Levis, Brandon Allen, and Tim Boyle.
And then probably Cam Ward.
Cam Ward. Brian says, thank you for this wondrous Tim Boyle update. I thought we had just signed a wide receiver. Yeah, honestly, that would be more on brand for this podcast. But it's in the spirit. We're talking about the Rodgers era. We mentioned Tim Boyle. When's the last time we talked about Tim Boyle in the show? It's probably been a while. But we summoned him. We mentioned him, and he got signed just like that.
Guys, this is the John Gotti of the NFL. He just nothing can kill this guy.
I just can't believe he keeps getting away with it. And again, I've switched my tone on this. All power to him. Get that bag, brother.
He played last year for 2 teams.
He played for 2 different teams last year. He suited up for 2 different NFL organizations. And you know what? A crazy thing I'm going to say is he actually looked okay with the Dolphins. Or with the
what do you have 2 drives?
With the Giants. Sorry, with the Giants. With the Giants. He looked okay with the Giants. He looked better than Tommy DeVito, which shouldn't be a revelation because Tommy DeVito shouldn't be in the NFL.
He's going to be 31 this year.
Good for him, dude. He is how many years is this in the NFL now for Tim Boyle?
2018 he came in.
This is going to be his 7th, 8th year in the NFL. Played for 8 different teams. Hell yeah, brother. Like, get your
5 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, 58.1 passer rating.
And you know what's dumb about this? He's not making the 53 because they're gonna bring in
exactly. So that's what I'm saying. Why,
maybe they trade Will Levis. I don't know. It would be actually very funny if they rolled with they traded Levis and then they rolled with Boyle as like the backup. I got to see something. Who's on this Titans coaching staff? Why did they bring in Tim Boyle? There's got to be some connection.
No, it's just Brian Callahan and Mike Borgonzi's a Chiefs guy. I don't know.
There's got to be a connection. I refuse to believe that there's not a connection.
This is the halftime show in the middle of the championship.
I know. I'm sorry. This is just so fascinating to me. Luke Stalker is their tight ends coach. That's awesome. Remember Luke Stalker?
He played tight end.
Yeah.
For the Titans.
Bo Hardigree is their QB's coach. He was with the Jets.
That's like a McDaniels guy.
Yeah, he didn't cross over with.
That's what I'm saying. There's not even a competition. There's not even a connection. I mean, excuse me.
I just can't believe this, Mike. I truly can't believe this.
Now that the halftime show is over,
I'm still I'm desperately trying to find one connection, and I can't.
I don't think so.
Oh, Tony Oden.
I'm going to segue back into.
I got it, Mike. Tony Oden is there. Tony Oden's their new passing game coordinator. So
totally.
And they have a lot of former Jets assistants in that because Denard Wilson's their defensive coordinator. This is very much a tangent, but Denard Wilson's their defensive coordinator. Frank Bush is their linebackers coach. He was also with the Jets.
Splendid.
So he followed Tony Oden. That's what happened. That's what I'm going to run.
Marvelous. Now, looking at the championship, we have debated the merits of both. Yeah, I think that what sold me is the Achilles tear precipitated all of this.
Yes.
Some of this stuff probably happens without the Achilles tear.
Some of it.
Madden ratings probably happens.
Yeah, some of it does.
Egypt trip probably happens.
We definitely don't. Leverage is the only thing here that happened before.
Yeah, Reddick might happen.
But maybe they don't even trade for him. I don't know. Maybe they re-sign Bryce Huff in this alternate reality. Who knows? I don't know if that would work, but maybe they.
Yeah, it's going to be.
The Zach Wilson quitting definitely doesn't happen because he doesn't play.
Because he never plays, so there's nothing to quit from.
Yeah, and maybe Greg Zuerlein doesn't fuck up. Maybe this is what threw him over the ledge. I don't know.
With that, I think we're going to declare the Achilles tear as the official winner of Aaron Rodgers Jets era, March Madness, March Sadness, whatever you want to call it.
March Sadness, that's good.
That was fun, Justin.
It was fun. You know what we could do in the future too? We should look, this would be very depressing. We could look into you know how people look at alternate history and alternate history timelines?
What if?
What if Aaron Rodgers didn't tear his Achilles and
the Jets win the Super Bowl? You
can
make anything up, though.
Well, I think we would try and map out realistically what we think actually could have happened that year. I'll say this. I think they trade for Devontae Adams that year. I think they get it done in 2023 if Aaron Rodgers doesn't tear his Achilles.
And with that, I think we might just call time on this episode of the Jet Press podcast. Because
Yeah, we were going to talk Garrett Wilson stuff, but it's over an hour now. Maybe we'll save that for next week or something. But actually, about next week, Mike.
Yeah, we might be moving that to a different day next week because me and Justin and a lot of other fan-sided buddies have a whole work conference over in Phoenix, which we will all be at. So that might disrupt the normal flow of things.
Yep. So we will be seeing each other in person, Mike. Are you excited?
Yes, we will. So we'll keep you guys abreast of when exactly we're going to go live. Maybe we end up moving around, maybe do a Thursday, Friday, something like that. Maybe we do it. Who knows? We're going to probably mess around with the schedule a little bit. We'll keep you guys updated on that. But until then, Thank you guys for joining into the Jet Press podcast for our March Madness special. You can follow us on all the podcast platforms, Apple, Google, Spotify, or where you get your podcasts. We're on all of them. And on YouTube, you can like the stream, subscribe, join the membership. That's all there. That's how you support the show. Justin, any major objections to that bracket?
No, I honestly, I think we nailed it. Perfect bracket from the Jet Press podcast, as always. We never mess up those. That's always perfect. Anytime we do anything like that, it is always flawless. Brian said, let's do an in-flight entertainment about the Jets drafting Fields instead of Wilson. Hold on. This could be a really fun summer idea for us, like doing all.
We're not flying out of the same airport.
No. I mean, like doing alternate history stuff where we look at like, hey, what if this thing didn't happen in Jets history? How could this have unfolded?
What if everything didn't mess up consecutively and keep compounding on each other like everything always does with the Jets?
What if I can't and Polly missed? You know,
what if Kenbrell Tompkins actually caught the ball?
What if Kenbrell Tompkins caught that pass? Do the Jets go on and win the Super Bowl that year? I don't know. What if this Ryan Fitzpatrick a Super Bowl MVP? I don't know, man.
Right now you're delirious.
Does he end up an NFL analyst or does he become a franchise quarterback for the Jets? I don't know. These are the questions that people are asking. I think that could be really fun to look into that, to do some alternate history stuff. Quick, Mike, before we leave, who do you got winning March Madness?
Auburn.
You got Auburn. You still got it. So you're sticking by the Auburn.
I like defense and I like experience in the tournament.
That would be Auburn. They're very
I believe their whole thing. Their starting five is older than the Thunder in the NBA. So
you read my mind. I was about to say that exactly. Yeah. Yes, I believe that their starting five is older than the Thunder.
And I like coaches with a ton of tournament experience, and they have that. So
I'm going to stick with Florida. Walter Clayton is that dude, but I think the Auburn pick makes sense, and I would not be shocked.
Don't they have that guy who's like 7'9"? He doesn't play though.
I don't know. He's
Olivier Rue is, I think, his
name. Oh, yes. I've heard of him. He's French.
Yeah, he's 7'9".
Yeah, I've heard of him. Didn't he go to like?
He's like the college football version of Big Show, where he just keeps growing.
We're like Great Khali. Anyway, all right, we're going off the rails as we always do. But yeah, so next week, just to clarify, next week Friday we will be streaming live on Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. We will not be live on Wednesday, so don't expect us to be there. Friday 3 p.m. Eastern time, we will be back talking all things Jets. Maybe talking Garrett Wilson. We'll see what's relevant then. But anyway, thank you all for joining us on the show today. You can follow Mike on Twitter at @Mike Luciano. Follow me on Twitter, Justin Fried. Follow the Jet Press and the Jet Press. Download the Jet Press podcast wherever you get your podcast. Check us out on YouTube. Subscribe, hit that notification bell. You could also become a member today. It is only 99 cents. You get your comments prioritized in chat. And it's a great way to help support the show. We did have multiple people, Connor and Mother Effin' Chew, who are they're both awesome. They're donating to us a lot. They always show the support. We much appreciate it, guys. But yeah, you guys know what to do. We normally stream live every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. Next week we'll be live Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you all for listening to Jet Press Podcast. I've been Justin Fried. That's Mike Luciano. Happy March Madness, and we'll see you.
Happy March Madness to all.